I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a different
Guess who's back? It's Hard Knock Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
Britney, we have a special guest host today.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about all things Star Wars and Star Wars Celebration. So who better than to have our resident Star Wars geek? As if we're not already hardcore Star Wars geeks, but she's the hardest of the chorus. Please welcome back to the podcast, Lauren Lola.
Hello. Good to be on for this one. It's going to be exciting.
Yes. So as you guys may have remembered, I spent the last 2 weeks out of the country. I was in Japan. I'm back. But the big thing that went down while I was gone was a little convention called Star Wars Celebration happening in London. Is this the first international celebration they've had?
No. They've held it overseas before.
Oh, have they? Okay. I know that the big news coming out was that the 2025 celebration will be in Japan. That's pretty cool. But so, yeah, we're going to spend this entire podcast talking about all of the things that we didn't get to talk about last week at Star Wars Celebration. And I'm going to turn it over to you guys because I like Star Wars, but you guys love Star Wars. So let's start with you, Brittany. What was the biggest thing you were most excited about coming out of Celebration?
Maybe I'm jumping more far ahead because of the announcement, but Ben Solo might come back. Just that's where my brain is going.
Yeah.
So yeah, for those who don't know, they basically announced that Daisy Ridley, who played Rey, is getting another movie, but I love Ben Solo just a little bit more, so I'm hoping that that means my guy is back. But if not, I'm still really excited for that announcement. Yeah, because I really like the sequel trilogy for the most part, so I'm looking forward to what's going to happen there.
Brittany does love Adam Driver. Lauren, what was the biggest announcement for you coming out of Celebration?
The biggest announcement, do I have to pick one?
Just one. Like you're picking your children.
Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know. I was just anticipating for us to go through each of the announcements as we go along.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's just one that sticks out to me because it all looks fantastic.
It was a lot. I mean, it was probably like one of the biggest Star Wars celebrations ever, just solely because we had been wondering about what is the future of cinematic Star Wars for a long time. Ever since Rise of Skywalker and the end of the Skywalker saga, it was kind of like, okay, where do they go from here? They would announce movies and those movies would slowly disappear, like the Game of Thrones guys and the Patty Jenkins one and the Rian Johnson one and the Taika Waititi one. Like there were all these announcements and then they just kind of vanish into the ether. Well, we finally got the next trilogy of movies. They're not necessarily a trilogy in the sense that they're connected to each other, but they're three movies set in different time periods. So this is a brand new approach to cinematic Star Wars. That's what kind of like made me sit up in my seat a little bit. Lauren, can you break down those three movies and what we can anticipate for the next chapter of Star Wars? Brittany already alluded to one set in the current timeline, but there are two others set in different parts of the timeline.
Yeah, so actually a quick note about the post-sequel trilogy film that Brittany talked about. It's being directed by Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy, and she will be distinctive in being the first woman and first person of color to be directing a Star Wars film, which is very exciting and long overdue. As for the other two, we are getting a Jedi origin story film of the source that will be directed by James Mangold. So this will be basically before everything. And then we're getting Dave Filoni live action film directorial debut because he directed the Clone Wars film. And that will be a culmination of all the TV shows that we've been experiencing, like The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and I believe Skeleton Crew as well.
Yeah, that one of the three, I know, Brittany, you mentioned the sequel trilogy sequel as the one you're excited about. I'm kind of stoked for the Dave Filoni movie only because, and we'll talk a little bit about like the current season Mandalorian, like it's starting to feel like it's going somewhere. And it sounds like that somewhere it's going is this movie. It's almost like the Avengers for the Mandoverse in a way, right? Because they mentioned it's going to be a culmination. It's also a culmination, if you think about it, of the animated series, because Clone Wars and Rebels are coming to a head because of the Ahsoka series, which we'll get to in a little bit. They released the trailer for Ahsoka, and we got our first look at some animated characters making their live action debut. So that's the one I'm excited for as far as the movies. Lauren, I know that you couldn't pick one, but I'm going to leave the James Mangold one for you. What are you most looking forward to about this Jedi origin movie?
Ooh, I'm not sure.
I mean, that's the one that I think the most out of left field, right? Because no one.
Yeah, I think if you had to rank them in order of least expected to completely we saw this coming, I think that one would be we did not see this one coming at all.
Because you would think like the High Republic era might have been the movie that they were going to do, but this predates even the High Republic, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe because we're getting the Acolyte, which I believe is set during the High Republic, that's like, okay, we got our story for that era. Let's go even further back in time.
Yeah. Brittany, what do you think of this approach? Because it's definitely unique, right? You're going to be doing 3 movies set in very different parts of the timeline. One kind of like, you know, a sequel to the most recent movies, one a sequel to like the most recent TV shows, and one like a prequel for even all the prequels, right? So like it's a kind of an interesting approach. What do you think of it?
I honestly think it's their best approach because there's so many people who really just love everything that is closer to when Luke was in his prime, which is like the Mando era, basically. So I feel like, you know, you're satisfying those fans who only really like, you know, the OG trilogy. And then everyone who is very on board with, you know, the sequel trilogy, they're getting their thing. And then people who maybe want something that's not fully connected to, you know, the Skywalker saga, they're getting something that's very far removed and in the beginning. So I feel like it's going to hit for people who want, you know, there's some people who want all of those things, and then there's people who want one of those things. So I think it's really going to hit to all the different fans and what they want, and it gives more open. And I feel like, again, we've always said Star Wars is such a huge universe. There's so many stories you can tell within the universe that you don't always have to focus on the, you know, Skywalker saga. So I do think that James Mangold film will be fun. I kind of hope that the first Jedi will be like a person of color, since a lot of, you know, the Force and the Jedi is obviously lifted from, you know, non-Western culture. So I'm hoping, like, you know, that at least that will be a thing I'm hoping for. But anyway, I think it's going to be great. And I feel like you're going to have more people who are a little bit more like, okay, cool, there's something for me that's coming out new with Star Wars, and not feeling so isolated, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm going to put it out there just for what it's worth. If the universe is listening, the first Jedi, Hiroyuki Sanada, and make it a samurai movie. Like James Mangold wanted to do, like he wants to do Westerns. Like his Boba Fett was supposed to be like a Western. And, you know, Logan was like his superhero Western. The Westerns were heavily influenced by Akira Kurosawa, so was Star Wars. Make the first Jedi Japanese, make him basically Toshiro Mifune incarnate, make him Hiroyuki Sanada playing a samurai Jedi, and I'll give you all the monies. Do that for me, I'll give you all the money.
I just couldn't remember the name of the actor, but yes, I want that.
So I'm just putting it out there in the universe. Sanada wielding a primitive lightsaber, katana style, would be the bomb. I'm, you know, maybe James Mangold's listening, but because like some of the best parts of The Mandalorian is when they blatantly, even the original OG trilogy, blatantly like rip off Kurosawa, right? So like, let's just come full circle. They did announce the 2025 celebrations in Japan. I mean, come on. So anyway, let's move over to, I mean, yeah, the movies are super excited. I will say that the sequel caught me off guard, because you kind of thought, like, to Brittany's point earlier, Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, definitely John Boyega, we're kind of like done.
Didn't I say something about, well, I don't know, I was like, wasn't Daisy, didn't I talk about on here about Daisy being at Lucasfilm?
I think you might have mentioned it, but
and I was like, why is she there?
You got the sense after Rise of Skywalker that the main 3 were kind of done, particularly Boyega. I don't think Finn's coming back.
No, they would have to do a lot of, like, I think they would really have to, one, guarantee that Finn is for sure going to be a Jedi, and especially because that's what it was hinted at with, like, you know,
everything.
With everything. So like, I feel like for him to get on board, it would have to be that. And I mean, I know now they're actively doing better to protect their, you know, their actors of color, but yeah, there would have to be a lot of, like, probably, you know, feet kissing and all that kind of stuff they would have to do, which I understand, because, you know, I do believe that he did deserve better. And same with Kelly. Like, I would love to see her back too, But
well, and this is set 15 years in the future,
Yeah.
which by the time it comes out kind of tracks because like Rise came out, what, 19? Did they give release dates for these movies?
no.
So we don't know when they'll come out. So
Yep.
it may not be exactly 15 years, but enough time will have passed that, to Brittany's point earlier about the potential of bringing back Adam Driver or even Kelly Marie Tran or, you know, Oscar Isaac, any of the sequel actors other than Daisy, like, again, putting aside the politics and the difficulty and the management of getting these actors back on board, like story-wise, this is about the beginning of the new Jedi Order and the Force is trying to take it down, you know, and knowing the fates of some of these characters. Like, do you foresee other sequel cast members potentially coming back, and where would they fit in this new story, particularly if you kind of want to like separate it from the sequels, right? You want to kind of create a new storyline.
I can definitely see what's Carrie Fisher's daughter's name? I can see her
Billy Lord.
Billy, I can see Billy coming back for sure.
Connix, I think is her name.
Daisy.
Captain Connix or
Yeah.
something like that.
I can really see her coming back just because I think it makes her feel closer to her mom. I feel like, or maybe I'm wrong in assuming that, but like I could see her coming back. My hope obviously would be that the boys and Kelly come back, but I don't know. I feel like Adam might be the only one who would, and not just because he's like my favorite, but I just feel like he's the only one who maybe had like an overall decent experience. Like,
well, you know, and it's funny you mentioned how like Lucasfilm has a bad track record of protecting their actors of color, and it's like the only two coming back are the two white people.
Yeah.
Just like Kelly, John, and Oscar, like, nope.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but like I said, I know the Mangold film was kind of like out of left field. I was surprised by the Daisy Ridley announcement because, again, I thought that they were done. I didn't think they would come back. I thought that their experiences, particularly on Rise of Skywalker and all the fan backlash, maybe soured them off Star Wars. So,
yeah.
Lauren, what was your reaction when Daisy stepped out on stage?
Yeah, I was definitely surprised just as much as anyone else. And I don't know, like, even though the film came out in 2019, it's been 5 years now since they filmed The Rise of Skywalker. So in between that and also having to go through a pandemic in between time, it's like there's been enough of a gap now where maybe there's some feelings to where that maybe have turned a little sentimental for the franchise, for Daisy at least. I can't say for the others, obviously, but yeah, that's just my overall impression of it.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like people who are following the current season of The Mandalorian, you know, that film will culminate in, like I said earlier, like an Avengers type where you're going to have characters from Mando and Boba Fett and Ahsoka all kind of like joining together in this movie. But if you're following along with Mandalorian, it's kind of like bridging the gap between the original trilogy and the sequels, particularly the most recent episodes, mentionings of the Praetorian Guards and cloning and Snoke, maybe, you know, the Hux's dad showing up in the most recent episode, right? Like, so there's definitely like groundwork being laid to connect the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy, even more than what J.J. Abrams did, you know, because J.J. Abrams kind of was like, what if the rebellion was a rebellion and the empire was the empire again? And it was kind of like, well, how did we get there? Well, let's lay down the tracks. I mean, I know the comics and books have been doing that, but, you know, for a lot of people, you know, they need to see it. They don't read, so they need to see the movies and the cartoons. And so like the Filoni verse has been, you know, that's kind of has been his bread and butter over the last several decades, right? Like filling in the gap.
Yeah, because like that's ultimately what the Clone Wars has served as, like a connecting issue for, well, okay, maybe not between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, but just like getting a better substance of what was going on during the prequel era. Yeah,
laying the context, and that's kind of what we're getting. Like, I don't think anyone went into Mandalorian thinking it's going to set up the sequels, but that's basically what it's doing. So I wonder if this like Mandoverse movie, for lack of a better phrase, like how does that set up? Well, will actors and characters from that film show up in the sequel?
I know because, you know, Ahsoka ends up being in and so does Ezra. They end up in the, you know, world between worlds. I don't know if there's a possibility to bring back people from that. And that's kind of where my mind was going to, like, how Ben might come back. Like maybe Ahsoka will, I don't know. But she'll be really old.
Well, I mean, Filoni did introduce time travel to Star Wars, and that never existed before Rebels. So there are ways to bring folks back. I did wonder, here's one last question about the films. You know, in this Mandoverse movie, they're talking about bringing back all the characters, you know, that we've come to know and love in the various live action Disney Plus series.
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting deep fake Luke in the movie?
Oh,
I'm not a fan of it. Like, I understand that people want to see more like stories of like Luke when he was younger, but maybe it's just me and I'm kind of like over Luke. Not you know, I don't know. I'm sorry, guys, but he's not the only important character in this grand universe now. The way that it is, you know, set up between all of the books he said and like everything, like. So I'm kind of like, I don't really want to see a deep fake of anybody, even though I talked about how much, like, I just finally finished Bloodline. That book is great. How much I would have wished we could have got a live action one of that, because it's really lays down the foundation of like basically the New Republic actually really kind of being the Empire with, you know, slightly new dressing. Like, it really dives into that, and it's such a good book. I would have loved to have seen Carrie have done that, but I don't want a deep fake version of someone else doing that, or, you know, no, it's the only Princess Leia story that I would be okay with is if they did the Princess of Alderaan one where she's like 15 or 16.
And you can bring back Lyra from Obi-Wan as a teenager.
Like, that's the only one that I think I would be okay with as of right now. But yeah, I'm not into this super deep fake.
I mean, that's the thing though, right? He's a main character. That was one of the decisions I wasn't 100% behind either, right? To your point, like, one of the cool things about The Mandalorian was that it was kind of carving its own path. And you could argue that, like, it's not doing that anymore, right? It's kind of, Din is basically like the Forrest Gump of Star Wars, where like he just happens to be around all of these like important people and not even realize it. Like, he was like hanging out with Luke Skywalker and Bo-Katan and like all these important characters and Baby Yoda, you know what I mean? And it's just like, he's just like, this is the way. He's just like, I gotta pee. And it's just like, he goes off, and that's Din's story. Turns out he's the Forrest Gump of Star Wars. Right? Because like he's around all these like important characters, and he's just like, I don't know who this guy is. Boba Fett. He's like hanging out with Boba Fett.
He's just like, okay.
R5D4, you know? He's just like, and so the point I was getting at is that like, it almost seems like, you know, I one of the complaints I've had is that it makes it feel like the universe is small, that like this one dude is around like all of these important characters, and it's supposed to be this vast universe. But if it culminates into, you know, an important, and he becomes like the leader of Mandalore or whatever, and I mean, he's going to encounter Thrawn too, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's all of these characters that this one dude just happens to be like, I was just a bounty hunter, and now I'm hanging out with like Jedi. And before we move on to like the animation stuff, let's just stay in the world of live action. We did get a trailer, since we were talking about Ahsoka. We got our first Ahsoka footage, and it confirmed not only Sabine coming back, but we see Hera, we see Ezra, we had Zeb in The Mandalorian. So like, other than Freddie Prinze Jr., we've seen live action versions of each.
He's got to be there. If they don't, Star Wars does not love me if they don't bring Freddie Prinze Jr. as a Force Ghost. That's what I will say, is they don't love me, because I love Freddie Prinze Jr. That was my first celebrity crush, and I will fight somebody personally if he is not in Ahsoka. I'm sorry, Kathleen Kennedy or whoever. I'm coming for you if there's no Freddie Prinze Jr. Unless he didn't want to do it. But
I think Freddie Prinze Jr. is very much like down to play a live action Kanan. But let me get off my bugaboo about Ahsoka, and then we can sing its praises, because the world knows. Everyone who's listened to this podcast, anyone who's read The Nerds of Color, follows us on Twitter, knows I stan Tia Sircar. I spoke to her personally. I was like, can you come back as live action Sabine? And she's like, it's not up to me. I want to, but no one's giving me a call. And like, okay, I get it, right? Like, you know, when they're recasting animated characters into live action, you have to consider various things. Like, Rosario Dawson is not Ashley Eckstein. I get it, right? Like, not all of the cartoon characters can be translated with their voice actors. Some are, though. Like they announced Lars Mikkelsen is coming back as Thrawn, right? Katie Sackhoff is playing Bo-Katan in The Mandalorian. And one of the reasons I've heard bandied about why Tia Sircar couldn't play Sabine is that she's too old to play Sabine, right? Because Sabine is a younger character. But I feel like Star Wars doesn't give a shit about age because, like, Katie Sackhoff should be like, Bo-Katan should be in like her 50s or 60s, right? Like, I know Katie Sackhoff is like older, but she's not like how old Bo-Katan should be. I don't think, right? Because Bo-Katan seemed older 20 years ago, and she's like the exact same. Like, look what 20 years did to Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Meanwhile, Katie Sackhoff is just like, what's her skin regime? I guess is what I'm asking, right? It's the helmet. The helmet helps. But I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Huntress and Birds of Prey, she kills it, right? I love her and Scott Pilgrim. She seems too young to be Hera, right? Like, if Tia Sircar is too old to be Sabine, isn't Mary Elizabeth Winstead too young to be Hera? Like, she's like 38.
No,
I feel like Hera should be in her
or how
late
many
40s, early 50s.
Well, how many years is Ahsoka taking place after like
It's at least 7 years after Return of the Jedi, right? So Hera was prominent in the rebellion pre A New Hope, and she was like what, a teenager during the rebellion, like
late 20s.
I don't know,
in her late 20s in the rebellion. So she would have to be in like in her early 40s, maybe. Right.
I mean, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, like I think her actual age is 38. So, and maybe Twilight's age different, you know, but I don't know. Like, I'm so salty about Tia Sircar. So like 2 reasons, right? Age and why some voice actors get to play the characters and some don't. I think there's a double standard, is all I'm saying.
Well, one I felt like with Ahsoka is she's more person of color coded, and Ashley is, from what I know, she's not. Ashley's white. So,
but I got the same vibe from Hera. I thought of Hera as a woman of color.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I feel like a lot of the Twi'leks are people of color too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like in terms of race, I would say definitely Mary's a miscast, but I do like Mary as an actress. So
yeah, I love her too. I mean, that's why I'm torn. And she's got like, you know, she's dating Ewan, so like she's got ties to the family. But I don't know, like MEW as Hera kind of rubs me the wrong way. And Natalie Lou Bordizzo, I'm sorry to say, is not Tia Sircar. Like, at least they kept it Asian, but from a colorist perspective, like they took a brown woman and made her a mixed race, light skinned East Asian woman.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed.
Yep. No, and I don't know, Tia, I think she looks good for her age because I didn't even realize she was so many years older than me. I thought she was a little bit younger than me, honestly. So I think, and she did post a petty post with her like hair
in a purple wig.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if we're being petty and we're getting the petty out first, then we can start talking about how cool the trailer is. I'm not feeling Sabine with long hair either. Like
it's yeah, I agree, because usually I'm a person who thinks like longer hair usually looks better on certain people, but yeah, the Sabine with long hair is not it.
Yeah.
But I do like the jacket though. That jacket she has on is really nice.
I just feel like, you know, like did Natalie just not want to put her hair in a wig? They want to cut it short? Like, come on now.
It looked like a bad wig still though. Like someone else also had a bad wig in something else that I was watching, and I was like, why is all the wigs so bad lately? I don't know if it was Star Wars thing, but if something else they were was a bad wig too, that reminded me of like her having a bad wig too.
So anyway, as the world's biggest Tia Sircar fan, I just want to get that out the way. She did post the petty Instagram photo looking good with the purple hair and looking like she could have pulled off a Sabine, but all that said, Lauren, what was your reaction to the Ahsoka trailer?
Very exciting. I actually want to take this opportunity to acknowledge someone else who was officially announced to be in the cast, and that is Diana Lee Inosanto, who played Magistrate Morgan Elsbeth in The Mandalorian. We didn't know what her fate was at the end of that episode, and so to see her come back for this is very exciting. And the reason why I bring this up is, for one thing, she is a really nice person. I've actually had the honor and pleasure of interviewing Diana twice, not for the Nerds of Color, but for Mixed Asian Media, and she's just a wonderful human being. And also, I think there's something to be said about her being part of this universe because it feels similar to what Kiwi Kwan and Michelle Yeoh are going through right now, where they're getting their flowers after X amount of years. I feel like the same is happening for Diana because up until she got Mandalorian, she was already not getting as many opportunities, both as an actor and particularly as a stunt woman, which is unfortunately like the double standard within that particular part of the entertainment industry. And so when she got the call from Lucasfilm saying, "Hey, we'd be interested to audition you for something," it was just blew the door open of having her become like an overnight sensation that way. So very excited to see her come back for Ahsoka.
Always down for more Asians in space. And plus, she's got ties to Bruce Lee. Her dad was famously one of Bruce Lee's best friends, Lee Santanto. So, like, just the transitive property Bruce Lee's legacy is in Star Wars is pretty fucking cool, too.
Yeah, and actually, I think the day the Jedi came out was on Bruce Lee's birthday, if I'm not mistaken. So it just all lined up so well.
I'm not excited for Ahsoka, right? Like, I'm, as one of the biggest fans of Rebels, seeing those characters in live action, you know, even if they're not played by the people I want them to be played by, it's still pretty cool, right? Like, because we got to look at Chopper, we got to look at Ezra, we got, like I said, we got to look at everyone. I don't know if Zeb will be in Ahsoka, but you don't just drop him in a cameo in Mandalorian and not bring him back for all the other Rebels characters, all the other Ghost.
He'll probably be there. I wouldn't be surprised.
So one other announcement that was made is that Kevin Kiner will be doing the score for Ahsoka. And for those who don't know, Kevin Kiner is the composer for a bunch of the anime series, including the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and the Bad Batch. But maybe what people don't know is that it's not just him doing the music. For the last decade or so, it's him as well as his sons, Sean and Dean Kiner. And the reason why I bring them up is that, number one, they are Filipino-American composers. I think they're the only ones to ever score anything Star Wars related. And the other reason why is that they've never been credited for their work for Star Wars. You'll watch the credits for any of the anime series, and they just mentioned Kevin Kiner. And so I interviewed them as well for Mixation Media back in 2021, and they talked a little bit about this, where there's a lot of politics in that sector of the entertainment industry, which keeps them from not getting from filling for a lot of the projects that they work on. I mean, the fact that they did get credited for scoring Jersey for Netflix 2 years ago is quite miraculous when you think of it in that way. So I'm hoping for anyone from Lucasfilm or Disney who are listening to this, please make sure Sean and Dean's names are in the credits for Ahsoka, because they have been working at this for just as long as their dad now, and they need to be recognized.
That's awesome.
I have spoken.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really honestly looking forward to the show, despite some of the, casting grievances and stuff. I'm really excited for Thrawn, honestly. So that's gonna be really fun. I don't know. I'm very excited for Ahsoka and the Acolyte, which was takes place in the High Republic, which I'm really excited for whenever they release stuff for that, because I really love the High Republic book so far. So yeah,
we didn't get a lot of Acolyte news at Celebration, did we?
We did. So if you are familiar with the books, there's a Jedi character, which I've talked about on the show before, is Vanestra Rao. There's going to be live action of her, and so she's basically going to be like 100 and like something years old though, but she will be in the Acolyte. And I haven't caught up to a lot of storylines because I read some stuff out of order, so don't spoil anything for me. Yeah, I'm really excited to see her. I believe, is it Rebecca? What's that? Is it Rebecca Henderson or Vanessa Henderson or something like that? I can't remember her name. She's playing Vanestra, which Vanestra is a very cool. She's like 16 where I'm at in the High Republic, and she's the youngest person to become a Jedi Knight. And she was, trained by one of the characters I kind of say like reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and like him and Obi-Wan would get along really well. So I'm kind of excited because a lot of things that they're kind of saying for the Acolyte sounds like she might actually be falling to the dark side. So I'm like, oh, what's going on? I'm a little intrigued.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Brittany,
yes,
you're a big fan of Paramount Plus, aren't you?
Oh, I am indeed. That is the home of one of my favorite shows, which I know some people I've talked about it.
Yeah. You're not the demographic.
I know I'm not the demographic, but the show I'm talking about is obviously Yellowstone. If you don't know, I love Yellowstone, and it's literally one of the most I'm saying, I know a lot of people oh, it seems like it's for like rednecks or something like that. I promise you, the drama is so good. it's just, and if you're a fan of Twilight, there's like an actor from Twilight that's on there.
Well, it's one of the biggest shows in the world.
Yes.
And it's got these like great spinoffs, right? Because isn't 1923 a spinoff of Yellowstone and 1883? Am I getting those years correct?
No, it's 1923. I'm not there yet on the spinoffs.
But it's got like Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. Like,
yes.
That's crazy that those are like actors you get for TV shows.
Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are on the 18 one, if you are a country fan. Which Tim McGraw is honestly a really great actor. Don't know if you've ever seen Friday Night Lights, but he's a great actor. So they're great. Those are great things to check out. I have to wait for my mom and brother to watch it because we are such a fan of the show. Teen Wolf is also on Paramount Plus, and they released a new movie with Tyler Hoechlin is in it and back. So I'm excited to watch that finally when I get around to it. I know it's been like 2 months now, but it's hard to coordinate our schedules.
Well, the reason we're bringing up Paramount Plus is that if you click on the link in the description to this podcast, you can actually stream Paramount Plus for 1 month for free. We're just excited that we get to share Paramount Plus with all of our listeners. So click on the link that you see in the description and stream Paramount Plus for free for a month. Try it. If you don't like it, you can cancel. But if you love it, if you love Yellowstone, Teen Wolf, Star Trek, all of the Star Treks are on Paramount Plus. Do that and you'll help us out in the process. I'll be honest, I was worried that when you have so many different mediums, like you have the movies and the animation and the television series and the comics and the books, and it's all following a single narrative, that's a lot to keep track of. And it's kind of helpful to have things like Star Wars Visions where it kind of live outside and you can not feel constrained by continuity and narrative. Another thing that we got out of Celebration was a trailer for the second volume of Star Wars Visions. It's moving away from just straight anime and it's embracing other forms of animation. Lauren, what was your big takeaway from the Visions trailer?
Oh, it looks so good. Because of the different animation styles that each of the studios who are being presented, specialize in, I thought it would be more jarring to look at as a whole, but I don't know, maybe it's just the way the trailer was edited that it felt very seamless. So, even before the trailer came out, I was very excited to learn that I recognized 4 of the studios that will be featuring short films. Studio Mir, Cartoon Saloon, Ardent Animation, and they are Shagio. And they also announced the titles and the cast for each of the studios as well. So one in particular, for Studio Mir, I was already excited when I saw them because they did the animation for The Legend of Korra. So already, as soon as I saw them, I'm like, okay, that's one to watch. And then they announced the cast, the English dub cast, and I got even more excited. It's a all Korean American voice cast, which is amazing. And 2 names in particular that I was excited to see on there are Daniel Day Kim and Eugene Liang. They are in the cast for that film, which is called Journey to the Dark Head. That was just so exciting to me, and I think more people need to talk about that because that's just very cool.
No, I mean, like I said, always down for more Asians in space, man. A couple years ago, I wrote, right before Last Jedi came out, I wrote a post about all the Asians and Asian Americans who've been in Star Wars, leading up to Kelly Marie Tran. And I feel like I should do a follow-up to that post because post 2017, there's been so many. It's almost like it's too many now. I can't keep up with all the different Asian Americans in Star Wars, which is kind of cool, right? That was always something we struggled with, not having any representation in this particular fandom. But we're all over the place, and can't wait for Hiroyuki Sanada as the original Jedi in James Mangold's movie. Yes, I'm putting it out there. All the rumors start now. Hiroyuki Sanada has been cast in Star Wars. Put it out there, even if it ain't true.
I would love it. I think that you could do it. I support it.
Yes. I know you love you some Bad Batch, Lauren.
Yes, Bad Batch. First of all, end of season 2. Wow. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but let's just say thank God we're getting a 3rd and final season because I have so many questions after what happened at the end. I also do want to quickly mention, because I don't think this has been talked about enough, is that Keisha Castle Hughes returns to Star Wars in season 2 for Bad Batch. For those who don't know, she played the Queen of Naboo briefly in Revenge of the Sith. And so for her to make a return in the speaking role for the Bad Batch is very cool, which, again, given what happens at the very end of season 2, it's like, oh, okay, so her role is going to be particularly meaty in this upcoming final season. So a lot to look forward to from that show, for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, they're killing it with their animated series. And I wonder, Bad Batch is set earlier in the timeline, but I wonder if there are live action potentials for those characters, and if so, like, is Tamir Morrison up for the challenge, or do we got to bring in like Daniel Logan and other like people who have played clones in live action before to I mean, can we picture a live action Hunter or any of the other characters from the Bad Batch? Like, and would it have to be Tamir Morrison? Tamir Morrison's 65-year-old deep faked face, or what? What do we got to do there? Like, Star Wars loves them some deep fakes. That's all I got to say. Anyway,
I don't know.
All right, as our special guest co-host, and I'm sure you have way more things to talk about from Star Wars Celebration. Do you have anything nerd popping specifically from Star Wars Celebration or anywhere else that you want to cover for this segment?
For Star Wars Celebration,
did we cover everything? I feel like there may be.
Oh wait, we're getting a second season of Tales of the Jedi.
I mentioned earlier there's some continuity difficulties having to like cast your net over so many different media. And I know last season, Tale of the Jedi caused some uproar because there were some things in Ahsoka's origin story that contradicted things from book versions of Ahsoka's origin story. One, how much does that matter? And is like anything that comes out just essentially retconning things that came before? And again, knowing that, you know, no shade to people who don't read, but most Star Wars fans probably end up into the I'll watch everything, I don't necessarily read everything. Because like, aside from just the books, there are a shit ton of books. There's even more comics and video games that like, I know I don't have any context around some of the stuff that happens in like video games or the comic books, for example. So like, you know, and there's also, you know, speaking of animation, there's this like preschool animated series coming out about like these young Jedi. But again, anything that comes out is supposed to be in context. I mean, fucking Kelleran Beck was from a Jedi game show. And now he's like a Jedi who saves Baby Yoda. So like nothing is out of continuity in Star Wars. So like all that said, do you feel like Tales of the Jedi, is it something that kind of like Visions can stand apart from continuity, or does it have to flow with the rest of everything coming out of Lucasfilm, do you think?
So I think, I don't remember when exactly. It definitely wasn't during Celebration. I think Dave Filoni had addressed this, which is that how the story is told will vary on interpretation from interpretation, depending on who's telling it.
Certain points of view.
Circling back to that, yeah.
So other than Tales of the Jedi, is that anything nerd popping outside of Star Wars for you, Lauren?
Yes, I just saw Suzume yesterday, which is the newest film from Makoto Shikai. I did do a review about it for the Nerds of Color. That should be out by the time this episode drops. And I think out of this film, as well as Your Name and Weathering with You, this one is my favorite.
Oh, wow.
Movie. I really, really liked this one.
Because those first two, I'm not a huge anime guy, but I love Your Name and Weathering with You.
Better than Your Name.
Wow.
It's better than Your.
Interesting. Cool. Look forward to reading the review, and we'll link to it if it's already out by the time the podcast drops. We'll link to it in the description.
For sure.
Brittany, what is nerd popping?
I don't know if I've said this on the show, but I saw Dungeons and Dragons twice, and I really, really liked it a lot. As for someone who has never once played Dungeons and Dragons, and I saw the old movie a long time ago, and then like, you know, my more recent point of reference would be when they reference it on Stranger Things. So I'd be like, oh, is that Vecna? Anyway, but no, I really, really, really enjoy the movie. It's a lot of fun. I feel like if you know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons, like pretty much like me, you will have a blast. I hope that they bring the cast back and do something else with them in the movie. And I don't know like how they came up with it. I don't know if it was like a campaign that like the director and writer, you know, played with his friends, like, hey, let's turn this into a movie, or just like, I don't know. But it was great. It was fun. Highly recommend. And what's his name is just so handsome. Right? How's his name? Reggae Jean-Pierre. Yeah, he's just, and when he shows up too, and the way he shows up is just like, it's just really funny, and like, that's great. He's really funny. He should do more comedy too, because he was really funny in the movie.
He's the Bridgerton guy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's nerd popping for me? Got nothing to do with Star Wars, got nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, but we got our first footage of the Penguin. Like brief footage. It was more like the show's in production, but we got to see some shots from the show. Did you not see this, Brittany? You're giving me like side eye.
No, I'm like, what?
Teaser in production. Clearly, you don't read the Nerds of Color. I'm a little offended. But I posted when I came back from vacation. One of the first things I saw. Well, this is not exactly nerd popping. HBO Max is changing their name
to Max,
just
right?
Max.
Oh yeah.
Which dumb. But as anyone who's listening to this podcast, I didn't like the name HBO Max to begin with. Like, I get the reasoning. They don't want people to think it's just HBO stuff, which is part of the problem by calling it HBO Max. It's not like Disney Plus was called Marvel Plus, right? Like, it's Marvel's one thing within Disney. HBO was one thing within Warner Brothers. I've been on the bandwagon. They should call it Warner Max. And they still should have called it Warner Max, but I digress. But anyway, as part of the announcement of the Max name change, they talked about some of the things in production. One of the things, for example, is a Harry Potter TV show. Like, I don't think anyone gives a shit about that.
No, it upsets me because, like, I'm sorry, we all know J.K. Rowling has just doubled down on her hatefulness, and it has.
And they're double downing on her. So,
and it
good
really
luck with
that. It upsets me because, like, I really did love Harry Potter. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I never loved Harry Potter, because I did. I really did. Like. And so it's very upsetting because I had always felt that the series would unfortunately have done better as a TV show, because there's just so much that happens in each book and there's so many characters and things that got left out. But at this point, I don't want it because it's like she's going to get money from it. And I don't
she's an executive producer. She's not even, I think she's like heavily involved.
So I just don't want her to get any sort of any more financial, uplifting from it. And it's such a slap in the face because for me, I always felt originally that the books were about, like, loving and accepting people, and then
that's the irony of all of it, right? Of all of the J.K. Rowling books, right?
So
like, did you not read your own books is almost kind of like the but anyway, this is not a J.K. Rowling nerd popping by any means, but one of the things within the announcement was production. They had gone into production on the Penguin. And so they released a 2-minute teaser of the Penguin, which is mostly behind the scenes footage, but we got to see some actual footage of Colin Farrell in the makeup, scenes that were not from the Batman. These are like brand new scenes just for the Penguin. There's a scene between him and Christina Milioti, who's playing Falcone's daughter in the show. And it's about, they've confirmed, we kind of assumed it's about his rise to power after the events of the Batman. So now he's filling the vacuum left behind Carmine Falcone. So it looks good as shit. And I've only saw like maybe a total 45 seconds of actual footage from the show. And if you love the Batman, it's the same vibe, the same tone, probably more crime gangster, which makes sense if it's an Oswald Cobblepot show. So that looks real good. Matt Reeves, the Penguin, it's coming next year. Didn't get a date, but it's coming next year. It's in production, and it's nerd popping for me. So with that, Lauren Lola, how can people find you on the interwebs?
I write for the Nerds of Color, and well, since I mentioned them a couple of times, I also write for Mixation Media. So you can check out all the other mixations I have spoken to on there. If you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram at Lauren Lola. I'm also on Twitter under that handle, although I'm not on there a ton. So just go to Instagram. It would probably be best.
Twitter's a dumpster fire, and none of us will be on it eventually, but sometimes it's hard to quit. But Brittany, how can people find you on Twitter and other spaces?
You can find me at Hi Brittany Monet pretty much on almost everything, I would say. And then you can also follow my other podcast at Lit Podcast at Lit Room Pod _podcast. Jesus. Oh God. I was doing so well there.
At this point, it's an ongoing bit that you'll never remember the name of your other podcast. I think we just keep it
the
that
handle.
Way. Even if you know the handle, right? I hope you know the name of your podcast.
Yes.
Even if you remember it, I think we should just go along with the bit that you don't know it. I think that's what people look for.
Why not just look it up before you record the podcast?
I was looking at it.
It's maybe get a better handle, Brittany, I think is what we're
I did not have control over the handle. But yeah, I do that. Well, we're also busy, so we haven't recorded in a minute. But yeah, that's the other thing that I do pretty much. And that's pretty much it for right now. So we'll see if anything new comes up soon.
Cool. You can follow me on Twitter at the Real Chow, _real_chow, and on Instagram at Real Key Chow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on every platform, and go to hardknockmedia.com to find this podcast and all of the other podcasts in the Hard Knock family. Rate and review us if you do. Subscribe to our videos on youtube.com/the Nerds of Color, and support us on patreon.com/the Nerds of Color. You can buy our merch at tpublic.com and search for the Nerds of Color. And until next time,
Moff Gideon and the Armorer in cahoots.
this is the way.
We have spoken.